Over the next 3 days, I'll be traveling deep into the remote Canadian wilderness. The objective is a region in the Rocky Mountains that few people ever see. But myself and Kane will be traversing a glacier, hiking through remote alpine, and pack rafting wild mountain rivers in order to visit this area and see if this could be one of the most epic routes in the Canadian Rockies. With tough terrain and unpredictable weather, this trip is going to be a challenge, but we're excited to be on the trail, exploring new places, and putting our skills in outdoor adventuring to the test. We just finished the first few kilometers through the forest, and now things start getting interesting. For basically the rest of the day, we're not going to be on any trails. We're going to be heading up this river valley and then hitting a glacier that we're going to have to traverse. And this glacier is a no joke. It's gigantic. It has crevasses. It has ice. We're going to have to really pay attention as we're crossing it. And then we get up into the alpine area where this wind's going to start playing havoc with us and make it really tough to find a campsite. This is an area that few people ever visit, and it's going to be a challenging trip, but I think the reward is going to be worth it. To the toe of the glacier. We had an amazing hike through the valley bottom where the glacier has receded. Just beautiful views all around, waterfalls, beautiful water, lakes, streams. It was pretty phenomenal. And now we have a few obstacles in front of us. The first one is getting onto the glacier. There's a bunch of runoff coming off it, so we might have to cross that in order to actually get onto the ice. And then after that, there's crevasses and holes and basically features that we want to avoid at all costs because they could be deadly. The third obstacle is that glaciers are ice, so they're very slippery, and that makes navigating and traversing them even more difficult. We've kind of chosen a plan to get on the glacier. We're gonna traverse this braided runoff and then hopefully get onto this ramp right here. We're probably gonna have to get our feet wet. It's gonna be cold. It's literally ice water. And yeah, it's gonna make for some uncomfortable feet for the rest of the day. Kane's gonna give this a go. He has way longer legs than me, but test with his pole just to make sure it doesn't get super deep at any point. It's looking good. This is the widest part right here, so it should be the most shallow. Looking good so far. The other thing we want to avoid is icebergs. Iceberg hitting your knee or your shin would not feel good. Woo! Oh, my feet are cold. That's so cold. You're on a glacier.
We're on a glacier.
We're on the glacier. This is pretty darn cool. We are gonna space out a little bit so that we don't end up in the same predicament if something happens. We do have ropes with us just in case, but we're not gonna rope up because in summertime, there's no snow bridging the crevasses, so all the hazards should be pretty visible. We scoured the glacier out from down below, and it looked like there's two water runnels coming down the glacier. So we're gonna try and go to on the right side of the right one, and that should be the least kind of hazardous route up the glacier. As we approach the rock wall over there that we're gonna have to climb up, we're starting to encounter crevasses that are running perpendicular to the path that we wanna take. And it's becoming a little bit sketchy. Hopefully it eases up as we get closer to the left side of the glacier there. These things are pretty scary. If you fell down a wider one, then it'd be really tough to get out. So we made it to the end of our glacier journey. That was cool, super cool, a little bit spicy, a little bit spooky. I definitely had to kind of get used to being on a giant block of ice and traversing the crevasses and holes and everything. But now we've made it to what I think could be what prevents this from being one of the most popular routes in the Canadian Rockies, and that's this giant rock face we got going on here. What are you thinking, Kane?
I think we're gonna have a lot of rocks in our shoes and maybe a few cuts on our hands.
Yeah, I think it'll be hands-on for some of that. Pretty scrambly. There's 3 gullies you can climb in order to get up this wall here. There's one on the right there, middle one, and then one on the left. We're gonna try the middle one because the right one has a bunch of snow in it, and then the left one looks really steep and scrambly. This is the part of the trip we're gonna see if we regret bringing in the pack rafts and all the gear that's associated with that, because our packs weigh almost 40 pounds with all the gear. And while it's gonna make days 2 and 3 a whole lot more fun and easier on day 3 because we're gonna get to float down a river, but carrying all this weight right now up this gully is not gonna be easy and not gonna be fun. So we hit some snow right here, which is kind of blocking our path. I'm gonna try and sneak around it on the side there and then get up above it, because once we get up above it, it should be relatively smooth sailing. Just kidding, that was sketchy. I got about halfway up and then had to down climb because it got a little too crazy. So we're gonna head more left. This is much better. This is basically a trail. Left side gully is the way to go. Fourth tries a charm. So we definitely chose wrong in the beginning. Door 1 was the way to go. If you choose door 1, it's kind of smooth sailing. Definitely some hands-on scrambly bits, but not too bad. The route we took ended up with a lot of hands-on scrambling and some more dangerous kind of navigation than I wanted. Hopefully there's no more big obstacles up this gully, and then we'll get up onto the plateau. Holy. The uphill part of the adventure has been pretty phenomenal already with the glacier, the valley, the gully that we had to navigate and basically rock climb up. We still have some obstacles today with finding a campsite and dealing with the weather. And then tomorrow, the downhill part of the adventure begins, where we're gonna be pack rafting some wild rivers, trying to navigate those rivers and make good decisions, and potentially doing a ton of bushwhacking if we're unlucky. So because of the gully, it's 5 o'clock right now, so we're starting to get a little bit hungry, especially after that workout of climbing straight up the hill. So we're gonna make dinner right now at this spot, which is a little bit sheltered, and hopefully that gives us enough energy to make it a tree line tonight and get our tent set up in a little bit of a more sheltered area, because in the alpine here, the wind is really strong. We're in a bit of a sheltered area right now. It should be good for cooking, but as soon as you get into the more open areas, it really picks up. Having dinner before carrying on to finding a campsite is a really good idea. Our spirits are high, our energy's high. We've been walking through a beautiful kind of alpine meadow area, which has been spectacular, but now we're kind of starting to drop elevation, and our goal is to find a sheltered campsite because the wind is howling and we want to make sure our tents aren't getting blown over. I do have a tent that should handle some pretty crazy winds, especially with some modifications, but I don't really want to be putting it to the test with the amount of wind that we're seeing up here. We're gonna meander down the valley looking for a spot to camp, and then once we get there, I'll let you know how the experience was, and then I'll share with you what tent I brought with me. So we made it to the spot where we're gonna camp tonight. We're not at the campsite, but we're at a campsite, and this one's beautiful. We have water right here, beautiful moraine, mountains all around us. You can see Watchman's Peak right there, which is what this circuit's named after. And yeah, good shelter from the wind. This is gonna be a really good spot to camp tonight. So I'm gonna set up right here because we've got a little bit of a knoll with trees that protects us quite well. And I'm gonna set up with my door facing that way, because if the wind changes and starts coming from the less sheltered direction, then at least I have my non-door side facing that new wind. So I got my tent set up. No surprise, it's the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus. This is one of my favorite tents of all time. And I'm using probably the most guy lines that I've ever used on a tent. I have 9 set up right now in order to really deal with that wind. And then I have my trekking poles installed on the door side and the back side in order to provide structural stability for these big wide panels. Let's go on a bit of a tour and I'll explain how much wind I think this tent could handle in its current configuration. So I had an earlier version of the X-Dome 1 Plus handle 73 km/h winds before one of the poles bent a little bit, but there's been some updates with the newer version, and I think because of that, this tent could handle probably 100 km/h plus winds. So one of the things that Dan Durston did was he added a second guy out point right at the lower pole there. That's about where I had my pole bend on me, so really good to see that. And something I didn't have on my wind test with the original X-Dome 1 Plus tent were guy out points at these end points, because Dan doesn't include cordage, so I didn't set up the tent with it. But on this trip, I have both of those end points corded out and guyed out, which should add some structural stability as well. I got Kane here to inspect it. I'm gonna see how many kilometers an hour he thinks the tent could handle with this setup.
I mean, this thing, This is so solid.
Yeah.
This is scary solid.
How many kilometers an hour?
Maybe 100? I don't know.
Yeah.
100 is a lot.
100's a lot, yeah.
Because again,
Like 100 gust, maybe.
Maybe.
But not sustained.
But this thing is solid.
Kane's in the X-Mid 1. He's using his paddles to set up the tent, which is pretty cool. And a stick.
This is cool. Like, this is pretty fun to be able to do this.
Yeah.
To sort of scrounge things together.
I'd love to like build an attachment, like telescoping attachment that you could put at the end there, and then make it really easy and not have to.
Like the other.
For the weight of the ties, you could probably have something. It looks like some weather's rolling in. We'll see when the rain starts. It's supposed to start at some point tonight and then continue for most of tomorrow. So we're gonna be a little bit wet, which is okay, because tomorrow we could be doing a lot of paddling on a crazy mountain river. It's up in the air. We're gonna sit and kind of discuss it because the river could be kind of sketchy. There's some canyons that we'll have to hike around, and that could be a crazy bushwhack. A lot of options. Tomorrow's gonna be an interesting day, and excited to take you on the journey. Good morning. It rained pretty much all of last night, and the wind picked up in a big way, but the tent held up great. I felt really secure in here. My sleep was amazing as well. For my sleep system, I prioritized weight and compactness, but I also wanted it to be warm and comfortable. Temperatures today are going to be quite a bit colder, and then they're going to approach around the freezing mark for night 2. And I wanted to make sure that I was getting good night's sleep and sleeping warm. There's been a bit of a lull in the rain, so I'm going to go get our bear bags so that if it does start to rain again, then we have our food with us. We can just eat in our tents and get packed up. But as I look around, it's hard to say what the weather's gonna do. It looks super rainy to the south of us, but then as you look north, it's not too bad. So I think we're kind of in the middle of 2 weather systems, and whichever one chooses us today is what we're gonna end up with. Kane's using the Ursack and I'm using the Atotech bear bag on this trip, and I must say I really like the fact that the Atotech bag doesn't absorb water. Kane's bag feels a little bit saturated, a little bit heavier, and the Atotech bag also is resistant to critters, which is really nice. Special delivery.
Oh, thank you.
I got our food bags just in time. It just started raining again, so we'll probably eat our breakfast in our tent, pack up, kind of hunker down for a bit, and then hit the trail. I have a no-cook breakfast, which is nice for cooking in your vestibule. I know I'm not going to burn it down. And yeah, with the X-Stone 1 Plus, packing up is going to be really easy because there's just so much space in here. That's one of the things when I'm in one of my really ultralight tents, if I am packing up from inside my tent because it's raining, it becomes a little bit more difficult, bit of a gymnastics exercise. All packed up, time to hit the trail. We did an interesting thing with our packing today because we're packing in anticipation of pack rafting. We have these dry bags that go inside of the pack raft tube, so we're not having to strap our packs to the top of our boats. This is really good for stability when you're paddling, as well as just decreasing the risk of entrapment with a bunch of stuff on your boat. And I think that's gonna be a really good call because we can basically just pull these dry bags out of our backpacks, stick them in the boats, and we're gonna be good to go. I'm not sure if the video did it justice, but this was one of the most beautiful campsites I've stayed in a really long time. Views all around, protection, water, you can't really ask for more. There's a handful of obstacles that we're gonna be navigating today, but the kind of looming one is the remoteness of where we are. We're tens and tens of kilometers from the closest road, and then another 3 to 4 hours from the closest major city. Because of that, we're not only gonna need to make good decisions around what we're pack rafting and what we're walking, but just being careful as we're walking through this area. We're gonna be doing a bunch of bushwhacking, probably having to climb over logs, deal with slippery rocks, and a slip, trip, or fall would not be a good scenario in this remote of a location. It started raining, so we threw in our rain gear, and rain's probably gonna be off and on throughout the day. We'll get periods of pretty intense rain like we just had 10 seconds ago, and then the sun might come out. Makes things a little bit more difficult because everything's wet, but doesn't really change much when we're on the river because we're gonna be wearing our rain gear anyways. So we're at an interesting point in the day where the trail splits into 2 different options. I have one option mapped for us to follow, but it's along this trail right here. And this is very faint, even for an area that's very infrequently visited. So we're gonna head down along the creek a little bit more, check out the other trail and just see if it goes a little bit better because we have the time today, and a lot of what we're gonna be doing is navigating and trying to find the best way down the trail. Based on the maps, we've crossed the trail and now we're just going past it a little bit just to see if maybe the map's a little bit off, but it's not looking promising. If there's nothing here, then we'll have to decide whether we backtrack to the other track or just try and bushwhack down to the river. How's it looking? Yeah. So we hit the trail that we were originally following, still just as faint as ever. The faintness of this trail kind of indicates that we overestimated how many people visit this area, because even 20, 30 people a year would leave a much bigger track than this. And it makes this area and this trip feel even more special considering how lucky we are to get out here. Or you just step over the log like a fancy pants. So we lost the trail a little bit down the valley. We think maybe it cut up this hill, is on top of the ridge, just because the valley down there might get choked up with fallen trees and get pretty steep before it hits the river. So more exploring, seeing if we can re-find the trail up on the ridge. Found it. Whew. So it must have just cut up at some point back there, but
That works.
yeah.
It was worth it.
Worth it. Normally Kane and I wouldn't do something like that. We just keep punching and keep moving, but this trip today, a little bit more, try to find the right path. There's the river down there that we're gonna be meeting up with soon. We just need to drop some elevation first. Made it to Castleguard River. This thing's pumping. We got a big waterfall right there that's adding even more water into it. Another cascade over there. We're definitely not gonna start pack rafting here. We're gonna hike along the river a little bit more, and then at the base of those bluffs, the trail meets back up with the river, and we should be able to make a decision on whether to paddle more or keep hiking, get around the first canyon that we're definitely not gonna be able to paddle, and then put in on the river. So once again, we're trying to find our way down this river. The trail on the map takes you above the waterfall, but we have no idea how to get up there, how to cross that rager of a creek. So we already crossed the river once. We're gonna cross it again, get on this island, follow the island down, and then hopefully that takes us pretty close to the end of the bluff so we can cross back over and get on trail. This is wild. I thought yesterday was crazy, but today is coming at us with a whole bunch of new, different challenges, and it's crazy in its own way. So we haven't been able to find a good place to cross back over to get to the left side of the river. So what we're gonna do is bushwhack and then hope for a crossing a little bit further down and then try and meet back up with the trail. So we're coming back down to the river. We feel really good about crossing about right there. And then there's a marker on a tree across the river. So that is hopefully a sign that there's a trail over there that we can then follow on the left side. This river is flowing. We haven't been able to find anywhere to cross. We've been trying out different spots. So what we're gonna do now, luckily we have the pack rafts. We're gonna inflate them, get all set up, ferry across the river right here, hit that eddy on the other side, and then put everything away again and then find the trail. You wanna go first?
I don't know.
I can go first, and
You can go back and forth.
I can go back and forth. Yeah, I can go first, then you can see where the difficulties are. I'll set up safety on the other side with the throw bag here, and that's a better safety to kind of swing you into the eddy if you need to anyways. Right, here we go. Plan is to ferry straight across, hit the eddy right over there, and be good to go. Nice. How'd that feel?
I was a little nervous, honestly. Yeah. I don't know what, like...
It's higher consequence.
Yeah.
We got across. That was fun. It was exciting. We're gonna get unpacked now, load all our gear back into our packs, and then try and find the trail. We're gonna have to bushwhack a little bit more, and then figure out next steps, because that's also up in the air. We didn't think we'd need our pack rafts that soon, but we were lucky to have them. It would have been a really tough hike along the south side of the river where there's basically no trail. We would have been doing that for tens of kilometers. Part of the reason for that might be the rain we got last night, or just spring runoff really kicking in. We have another ford of a creek. We didn't even know this was gonna be here. This is a flowing creek that we're gonna have to cross. This is a crazy trip. We made it. That was the limit. It was spicy. I undid my hip belt just in case. I'm a bit shorter than Kane too, so I have a lot more trouble fording rivers than he does. That ford was definitely unexpected. I think we're just a little bit lucky or unlucky with the timing of our trip, with snow in those gullies, all the rivers just raging. It's definitely throwing some additional challenges our way. So we've hit another kind of major decision point for the day. We've passed all the big canyon section, the dangerous section of the Castleguard River. We went and took a look at it. It's crazy. There's a lot of water flowing through there and a lot of just crazy waterfalls and stuff like that. But this is the section that we thought maybe we could paddle if it was looking good. There's about 4 kilometers of river that you can paddle before you need to take out before another canyon section. And under normal circumstances, I think the river's flowing quite a bit less and it's a little bit tamer to paddle. But just with Kane and I both kind of easing into pack rafting right now and not wanting to push our limits too much, we decided that we're gonna actually walk the river. There's a trail that goes all the way along it, and then scout it as we go, so that if we come back again, we know what we're in for and we can kind of make a better decision on whether we paddle or not. We made it to the spot where we're gonna set up camp at the Castleguard cabin here. Today was a wild day. We definitely put in more steps than we needed to, but it was really cool exploring, finding the actual trail and the path of least resistance as opposed to just kind of bushwhacking where we might want to go. And then scouting out the river was really cool. We did not expect flows as high as we did. We thought maybe we'd be able to float the Castleguard River, but the fact that the flows were pumping and we weren't able to is completely okay, because tomorrow we have the Alexandra River that's going to go down just past there, which should be a little bit tamer, a little bit easier, and give us some amazing views and a great 20-kilometer float back to the car. Step one for me at camp today is to have dinner. Usually I'd set up my tent and everything first, but I am starving, really low energy, so it'll be nice to have some calories in order to set up. And once I get my tent set up, there's some things I want to share with you about my sleep system, because the temperatures are supposed to get a little bit colder tonight. The ground is wet, condensation might be an issue. There's just a lot more factors at play, and I'm curious to see how my gear performs. So I'll introduce you to my sleep system and let you know what I'm going to be looking at with the tent overnight tonight. Feels good to have some food in the belly. Got the tent set up, got my sleep system set up. The big thing that I'm looking for tonight for the tent is condensation. The ground's wet, it's gonna be cold, it's been raining, so the dew point should be at a spot where we should be able to see condensation. On a lot of the other tents that I've used, in these kind of conditions, I'd probably be seeing condensation. But the X-Dome so far, I've had really good luck with condensation, and we'll see how it goes tonight. For my sleep system, like I said, I wanted something compact and lightweight, but that was still relatively warm and comfortable. And on this trip, I'm using the Big Sky Dream Nation pillow, the new version that has the pad attachment system already installed on it. You don't have to be gluing on anything or to make it attached to your pad. This pillow isn't for everyone, but I love it as a pillow that's still comfortable but very lightweight. My quilt is the Enlightened Equipment Enigma 20-degree quilt. This quilt should keep me warm tonight, but it's the one I used on the Great Divide Trail. I've used it for who knows how many nights, and I've never washed it, so it doesn't have as much loft as it used to. But I was warm last night, and fingers crossed I'm warm tonight. For my sleeping pad, I'm using the Nemo Tensor All Season. This pad, very warm, very compact, and fairly comfortable. I don't have really any worries about the pad keeping me warm tonight. It's more the quilt that's a big question mark. So some fun tests of gear that I'm gonna be doing tonight, and then tomorrow we're gonna head down to the river valley and try and paddle the Alexandra River. We brought our pack rafts. We used them today, kind of unexpectedly, which was really cool. Tomorrow we're hoping to pack raft for 20 kilometers down a very beautiful river that should be moving pretty quickly and should get us back to our car, but hopefully not so quickly that we don't feel comfortable paddling it. We're probably gonna eat a few more snacks, and then it's gonna be probably pretty early to bed. We'll check in the morning and let you guys know how the night went, and then continue on with the adventure. Good morning. Last night was interesting. It ended up being quite a bit warmer than we expected, so I slept great, slept warm. The pad, the quilt, the pillow, all did phenomenally. If you're interested in all the gear that I brought on this trip, I'll have my Pack Wizard gear list linked below so you guys can take a look at everything that I brought. It also rained all night and into this morning, so we ate breakfast in our tents and did most of the packing in our tents as well. The X-Dome finally had condensation inside of it. Kane also had condensation inside his X-Mid. It wasn't a ton, and the well-implemented double wall construction of the X-Dome kept me from touching the walls, so it really wasn't a big issue at all. And the Sil Poly material dries really quickly and doesn't really hold on to water. So this morning as I was packing up, I just gave the tent a really good shake. It got rid of most of the water, and I was able to pack it up pretty much dry. We have a short walk to the river where we'll then see how well it's flowing, and hopefully we'll be transitioning to pack rafting. We're really hoping we'll be able to pack raft the river because the consequences are not great. If we're able to float the river, it'll take us about 3 hours to get back to our car because the river's moving faster. It's a bit of a straighter shot. Whereas if we can't pack raft, we're gonna be having to hike 20 plus kilometers through this wet forest with a ton of blowdown. It's not a great trail, and it will probably end up taking us way longer, potentially up to 2 to 3 times as long. So we'll either get home mid-afternoon and be able to have a hot shower and a great dinner, or we'll be getting home really late, and that'd kind of suck. We made it down to the river. Beautiful area here. We kind of wish we had camped here because there's just mountain views all around. We would have just been able to blow up our boats, pack up, and just hop on the river. The river is flowing. There's a lot of water flowing down here, but what we like about it relative to the Castle Guard is that it's a little bit less complex. It's more straightforward. Even though there's a lot of water moving through it, there's not as much constriction, and because of that, we feel really confident being able to get on the river and float down it. The next step, as usual with pack rafting, get everything loaded up into the boat, inflate it, and then we'll hop on the river, and we'll see how long it takes us to get back to the car because it's about 20 kilometers. I'm guessing 3 hours. It might take us a little bit longer, maybe even a little bit less. All right, here we go. Woohoo! We're having a good float down the river. There's a couple of things that we're needing to consider. The first one being that the river is quite a bit pushier and there's a lot more flow than normal. So it's pushing us to the outside of bends where there's usually a lot more hazards like trees that have fallen into the river and that kind of thing. The other consideration is that this river is very braided. So there's a lot of channels that you could be taking, and you really have to use good decision making and river knowledge and reading to pick the right channel in order to find a spot that's not going to be too shallow, but it's going to be safe. So far, we've been doing a pretty good job of that and finding a nice route down the river, and we're moving very quickly. Kane clocked us at 17 kilometers an hour for a bit there, which means we'd be finished this in like an hour and a bit if we continue that pace. It's also beautiful. There's a giant glacier behind us, a lot of mountains all around. Way better than hiking in the forest. This is awesome. They also did a controlled burn through this river valley last year. So not only would we be hiking through a forest, we'd be hiking through a burnt forest, likely with a bunch of deadfall, which is, I've done that before. It's not fun. It's one of the least fun things you can do, especially if it's raining and you're wet. There's definitely some lessons I learned on this trip. One of them being that you just really can't underestimate cold and rain when they're combined. It was just above freezing for the last 2 days, raining the entire time basically, and that really sucks the energy out of you and makes backpacking a lot more difficult. You really have to have your systems dialed in order for that to work out. I also think I underestimated the utility of pack rafting. Yesterday, when we got stuck on the one side of the river, the pack raft is what saved us. Otherwise, we would have been stranded on that side. We would have either had to make a really dangerous ford or hiked basically bushwhacking all along this side of the river back to the car, which would have taken us, which probably would have actually added days onto the trip, and we just weren't prepared for that. So the pack raft kind of saved our butt in that regard. Another thing we kind of learned on this trip, partly because it was more of an exploratory adventure trip, is that backtracking can sometimes be your best option. There's a lot of times where we were going down a path and normally we'd probably just keep moving in that direction just because that's often faster than backtracking. But on this trip, we kind of learned that backtracking can save some time, and it also allowed us to explore some really cool areas. The last lesson that we kind of learned on this trip is really applicable to pack rafting, and that's that a dry suit could be a game changer. If we had had dry suits, we would have really thought a lot harder about paddling the Castleguard River, because our biggest concern was being in a really remote area, flipping, dumping, getting really wet, and then trying to stay warm in cold temperatures with rain. If it had been 30 degrees Celsius and sunny, that also would have changed the calculus a little bit, but the dry suit would have been guaranteed warmth. As far as whether this trip is epic, I think there's no doubt that this is an epic trip. Between the glacier, the alpine meadow, the rivers, the waterfalls, there's a lot of awesome things on this trip. Kane and I had a blast from an adventure standpoint. It probably isn't a trip that's going to be a Canadian Rockies classic just because of all the obstacles. Especially if you come at high water, it becomes a very, very tough trip. So I think if I was going to do this trip in the future and I wanted it to be a little bit easier, I'd plan it for August, maybe end of August, when flows are a little bit lower and there's not any snow in those gullies. The sun's starting to come out a little bit. We're gonna enjoy a really nice paddle back to our car down this beautiful river, moving very, very quickly. If you wanna see my first ever pack rafting trip, go check out this video right up here. I go over the gear quite a bit more, talking about the benefits of this specific pack raft and why I think pack rafting is really cool.